All right, just want to welcome everybody. This is the Silver Bullet live show where we can give you guys a little presentation, show you how to do something. And in this topic, we're going to be talking about the print and cut feature. And I'm joined by three other people here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So go ahead, Sherri.
Sherri Jensen, Silver Bullet Cutters, USA.
All right, we're also here with Dawn. Go ahead, Dawn.
Hi everybody, Dawn Grantham from Time Graphics in the UK.
All right, and we also have Michelle.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle.
All right. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about the print and cut feature with the Silver Bullet. And if you own a Silver Bullet, you know that it has that laser light and for the main purpose of print and cut. So we're going to talk about that. So, all right, so what is print and cut? So it basically allows you to take a printed object, like you see this dog here, and if you supply some cut data around it, it allows you to print it from a printer and allows your Silver Bullet to cut around it. Okay, so there is a little disclaimer, and I'm going to let Sherri here tell you about that.
Yeah, I'll explain the disclaimer as far as US based, and if Dawn has anything. We request that anybody that is purchasing the machine to do print and cut to learn your machine first, learn the settings of the machine, the force and speed of the machine, and the basics of it. Go all the way through the Learning Center, do some cutting with cardstock, some of those things, maybe some chipboard, so that you learn how to use the machine really, really well before you jump into print and cut. We have had a number of people who have not had success with print and cut and get very, very frustrated with it and then just get tied knots because they try to jump into that first and without knowing, the force, speed, how to set those things. They get extremely frustrated, and we end up spending days on end when if they had learned those things to begin with, they'd be more comfortable with the machine, and then print and cut would be much easier. So as it relates to the United States, we make a request that all people buying it for that purpose would learn the machine first. And Dawn, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that?
Just that print and cut is the hardest operation to learn. So yeah, better to wait until you're experienced with your machine before you attempt it.
All right. So basically, in a nutshell, on how it works, because this is probably one of like a misconception, is the Silver Bullet machine does not actually print; it cuts. Okay, so sure cuts a lot within the program itself. It will send your file to your printer. You'll pull it out of your printer, and you'll insert it into your Silver Bullet as long as it has some cut data along with it, and it will cut, assuming that you have a calibrated laser to the blade. And so here's some examples of some print and cuts, and I'm going to let Michelle take over from here.
Yeah, this is a project by Gigi Gleason, and this is for her grandson's baptism card. And she used a cutting file, and then she printed it on a laser printer, and then she foiled it with a foil master, and then she cut it out, and she adhered it to the front of her card. And this next project is by Lisa Howell. And the front of the card, she has cutting files. And then on the inside of her card, she printed a Bible verse. And she has it cut out and framed. And she used the print and cut and Shortcut Slot software. And this next project is by Penny Duncan. And her youngest son's fiance asked her if she would make their wedding invitations for them, and she had to make 125 invitations, and this is the project that she created using the print and cut.
I'm going to let Dawn here explain the laser versus the optic type of sensor when it comes to printing and cutting with the machine. So go ahead, Dawn.
Okay, an optical eye used by some of the machines uses a sensor. That sensor needs the right amount of light, the right media color, in order to be able to see the registration marks. The laser, or rather it's actually an LED light, isn't dependent on lighting, it's not dependent on media color. So long as you, the user, can see the registration mark that you've printed, then you can line up on it. It's a fast method. Once you're used to it, you can do it in well under 30 seconds. And it's because the user is lining up, it's a lot more reliable. Like I said, if the user can see the mark, you can line up the machine on it, so it will work every time.
All right, so you have the machine and you're wanting to do print and cut, and it's time to calibrate. And we're going to sort of discuss on the calibration process in Shortcuts a lot. It's pretty simple. What the calibration will do for us, the automatic version anyway, will get us in the ballpark of where a print and cut should be, and then we'll just have to fine tune it a little later. So this image right here is a silver bullet machine. It's pointing to the carriage, and this is a top view of the carriage. So this is the purpose of the calibration. You're telling Shortcuts a lot. You see that little yellow dot, that is represented by the blade, and that little red circle that you see at the bottom, that is the laser. And we need to tell Shortcuts a lot the distance that laser dot is away from that blade. So that's why we need to do a quick calibration. So steps for success with this, you can use any piece of paper you want, scrap paper, for this calibration. Of course, you're going to need a carrier mat, and then you need the you need to ensure that you have the silver bullet settings within Shortcuts a lot, and we're going to go ahead and go through a demo of that. So a basic concept of what we're going to do is we have a scrap piece of paper, we have it on our mat, and of course we inserted it into the silver bullet. Once we go through the calibration process, it's going to place, it's actually going to cut a plus sign on the paper. And we'll have a video of showing this as well. And then it is your job to take that laser dot and line it up with that plus sign. And that basically is the automatic calibration in Shortcuts a lot. So we're going to go ahead and exit the show here, and we're going to do a quick little Shortcuts a lot demo setup here. So let me go ahead and go into Shortcuts a lot. And whenever you do this, just place a shape on there. We're going to need the rectangle a little later for the test cut on this. So you might as well just put a rectangle on there to begin with. And that's down here in the library. And you want to stretch it out so that you'll be able to measure it just for later. Okay, so the thing with the calibration is, so we added the rectangle. The next thing that we want to make sure anyway is that our mat up here, of course, says silver bullet, because that's how we get into the calibration setup, is through it. And if you don't have the silver bullet mat on there, you can always go up here to cutter, my cutter, and it should be here. If it's not, you can go into manage cutters and add the silver bullet mat there. So now that we're in the, we know that we're working with the silver bullet. Now it's time to do the automatic calibration, and that needs to be done through the cutter menu, and that's that button that you see right here, right up here. And so we're going to click that, and this menu will appear, and we need to go to the print and cut option right here. And you want to make sure that your machine is turned on, and that your blade is over the piece of scrap paper, and it is online. That's important. And then we want to go to Calibrate Laser. The next part is pretty self-explanatory. So with your silver bullet turned on, it's online. All you have to do is click the next button, and you can follow these instructions here. It's basically telling you, hey, make sure that your knife or your blade is right over the scrap piece of paper where it's going to cut. Once you hit the cut button, or hit the next button anyway, it's going to place that plus sign that we saw earlier in our demonstration. And then you can use your arrow keys, not only on the keyboard. I typically use the one on the keyboard. It's easier than using the online calibration that's right here. So you're going to click the next button. It's going to place a slice on your paper, and your little LED laser light will turn on, and then you'll be able to move that laser. Now, while we're on here, before we move on, I do want to show you this button right here, because we're going to come to this menu item as well, the edit values. And basically, we're going to try to stick with millimeters here, but these are the values that are by default. And when you calibrate, these values will change. Okay, so just wanted you guys to see, this is where you can get to the Calibrate laser. If you know the values already, sometimes after you do a calibration and you know it exactly, you can always come back in here and plug those in case you happen to lose them or you move to another computer. All right, So let's go ahead and go back into the keynote here, and we'll see what actually happens on the silver bullet machine itself. So that's that plus I'm talking to you about. It will do one strike, and then we'll do another strike to make that plus pattern. So this is, once we click that next button, this is what happens on the machine itself. So as you can see, we're trying to line up that laser to that plus sign. Now, some of the controls or options that Shortcut Slot gives us is if we hold the shift button down and use our arrow keys, it will move that laser dot in large increments. If you hold the control button down, once you get really close to that spot, it will move it in small increments. And then once you get really, really close, if you hold the shift button and control button down at the same time, it will move it in even smaller increments, as you can see right there. And once you're over the top, you're going to go ahead and hit the enter key, and that sets the value. All right, so we're done with that, and we're going to go ahead and do a test print and cut. So any questions on that? If there aren't, we can go ahead and move on, because like I said, this gets us into the ballpark range of the calibration. All right, so now it's time for a test cut. Steps for success on this: we want to use a rectangle. The reason why we want to have a rectangle is it's a nice shape that we can measure left and right to make adjustments. And of course, you're going to want to have a metric ruler, and that's basically because it has smaller divisions of the units. If you're going to stick with the English side, American side, choose a ruler that's maybe 1/64 of an inch that you can tell the difference in. That's how fine-tuning you want this. Of course, you're going to need a printer for this next step, and make sure that your silver bullet is connected to your computer.
As well as the printer.
As well as the
Can
printer.
I just interrupt?
Yeah. Go ahead.
We've got a question from Andrea.
Okay.
She's asking if you have to have your machine calibrated straight out of the box before doing this calibration. No, Andrea, you don't. It's very, very, very unusual. In fact, I've never had a machine yet that needs to be calibrated for your straight, normal cutting. The only time you need to do calibration is for this itself, for print and cut, not for any other reason. Anyone want to add to that?
Nope, good point.
Okay.
All right. So the concept of what we're going to be doing here with this step here is, this is our printed piece of paper that's going to come out from our rectangle. If you'll notice, we have the registration marks on there. And they're even numbered for you, 1, 2, and 3, and that's the order that Shortcut Slot wants you to move that laser point to, so it knows where that shape is. So you're going to place that on your mat. Anywhere is fine. And then you have the laser dot that will turn on. And it is, once again, your job to use the arrows, not only on your keyboard, but on the screen, if you wish, to tell Shortcut Slot when it is over that first point. Once it is, you'll hit the enter key, and it will move over to where it thinks that next point is. And once again, it is your job to move that laser dot to that registration mark. And same thing for the third. And once it does that, it's going to go ahead and cut whatever shape that you have, assuming that it has cut lines. So let's go ahead and jump into Shortcut Slot to walk you through the steps on this and some good little tips that we have here. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. So it's time for test cut. We have our rectangle on our mat, and some things that you may want to check out is that you want to go ahead and go to the preview here, because this preview will tell us a couple things. Okay, so you want to check mark this show printable. You also want to check mark the show print and cut registration marks and the show print margins, because that puts our paper on there. Also up here at the top, you get the name of the printer, so you sort of know that, hey, your silver bullet is not printing this. It is coming out of your printer. So we have the registration marks 1, 2, and 3. It is inside our paper margin, and everything looks good. So this is a good, helpful tip for you guys to use when you're doing this, not only for the test print cut, for when you actually do print and cuts. Anything else you wanted to add on that, Dawn?
No, just as you say, use the print margins, because if your registration marks don't print, you're not going anywhere.
Yes, yes. I think it will even warn you that when you go to actually print this or go through the print and cut
Yes, it
process,
does.
it will warn you saying,
Yeah.
"Hey, this registration mark is outside of your margins. You still want to continue." So you probably would not want to continue after that.
If I can just interrupt
Mhm.
again.
Go ahead.
Jana wants to know if you must use portrait mode only for print and cut. No, you can use whatever you want. I use landscape most of the time. It's personal preference.
Good.
And Andrea is asking which blade is best for print and cut. It depends on your media. Whatever blade you would normally use for cutting that particular media is the one that you would want to use for print and cut.
All right.
Okay,
So,
sorry, Rob, go ahead.
oh, you're fine. You're fine. Like I said, if you guys have questions, ask them. That's what we're here for. All right. So after we do this, one of the probably one of the big things that I've see as far as support goes is a lot of people are like, hey, I go up to the I'm trying to print this, so I go to the file print, right? Well, that's not that's not the case here. So you need to go through all your print and cut features. You need to go through the cutter menu just like we did before. So you're going to go to cutter, and then there's that button again down here, the print and cut. And this time you can go to the print button. So you're going to click that and choose your printer, and it's going to come out of your printer. You're going to place it on your mat, insert it into your silver bullet machine, and you're going to go ahead and click the next button. And when you do that, a new set of instructions will show up, just like before. You get a nice little graphic here showing you what registration mark it's looking for once you click the next button. Okay, and down here, those are those same tips that I gave you before. Whether you use the keyboard, you can hold the shift button down, use your arrow keys, and move in large increments and so on. So we'll see that here in the video. And yeah, so let's go ahead and move on to the video, what this actually looks like once we click that next button. All right, so once you click that next button, it's going to want you to go to the first registration mark. Okay, so as you can see, we're pretty far away from it, and if you hold the shift button down and use your arrow keys, it will move it in large increments. See, so there's the shift button, it's moving all the way to the left, and then once we get close, then we can use the control button to get us up there, and then once we're really, really close, we can go ahead and hold the control shift button and get us right on there. And you'll notice a little later on we're going to talk about the registration mark thickness and stuff, but once you're over that dot, the laser light seems to disappear once you're right over that ink. So you're going to hit the enter key, you're going to move on to the next one, and you're going to do the exact same thing. And once you're over that dot, of course, you're going to hit the enter key again, and you're going to move to that last one. And like I said, once it's done with that, it's going to go ahead and go around that rectangle, and now it's time to check out the cut. So how'd the cut go? So we're going to take a look at it and see if it needs any fine tuning. So here you can see in this photo, that was the cut, and we're going to go ahead and take it off. So you can see it needs some adjustment, and this is what we need our ruler for this next part. And so we call this part, time to fine tune. So
Can I interrupt again for another question?
yeah, go ahead.
Jana again says each time she's tried print and cut, the first registration mark lines up perfect, the second mark also. On the third, the machine pauses. She's read on the forum about pausing of the SB machine, but she's at a loss. She's done print and cut for 3 years, so maybe she's missing something. The machine ever says pause is when it's out of the cutting area. So move your media, if it's doing it on the third mark, move your media slightly further over to the left, and hopefully it shouldn't do that again. Any of those of you got a different suggestion?
Nope, that's what I would have suggested too.
Okay.
A
All
lot of
right.
issues with that pause button and people not understanding it's because it's out of range.
Yeah, so it's like the carriage is moved to it's either left or right extreme, and if it goes any further, it would go out of the machine. Is that right? Is that why it pauses?
Basically, yes, it pauses just short of either side
Okay.
so that it's not going to bang into the side and potentially cause any damage.
Yeah, so
Okay.
safety feature.
Yes.
All right, so hopefully you guys remember back when I talked about these values here. So these are the values that we're going to have to adjust, and it's very easy to adjust these numbers. So when you go to these values after you've done the automatic calibration, they should be different than the default. And we're going to go ahead and take a look to see how can we adjust these values. So notice that there is an X and a Y on there, and these slideshows will hopefully get you guys going in the right direction. So, for example, say this was our cut, or this was where our printed item was, and this red represents how it cut. Okay, so you're gonna need to get that ruler out, and you're gonna need to measure the distance from where it was printed and where it actually cut. Okay, so if your image is cut to the right of the image, you're gonna go ahead and measure that distance, and you're gonna increase the Y value by that measured amount. Okay, so in this example here, the cut is to the left of the image, so you need to decrease that Y value by that measured amount. All right, so we have this, another possible example is the cut is below. So we're going to go ahead and decrease that X value by whatever you measured. And it's just the opposite if you have an image that is cut above. So you're going to increase that X value from the measured amount. And of course, you're going to want to repeat this process until your fine tuning is, perfected. You may have measured it and it's not quite exact. You go try to cut it again and it's just a little bit off. So fine tune it. The next pro tip here is, you want to write down those numbers because sometimes, Surecuts lot that may dump those numbers, and you're wondering
Or, I'm sorry,
why this happened.
sometimes, if the computer crashes or a software update, sometimes we'll throw these off as well. So we suggest that people write the numbers on on a piece of tape or paper and put it on the inside of the hood of your machine. That way you'll always have them. You just go back and put them in again. You won't have to go through all this.
Yes, I meant to.
If I can interrupt
Yeah, go
again.
ahead.
Marcus J says it would be helpful to show the X and Y directions right in the diagram itself.
I'm not clear on that. Are you, Rob?
No. Say again.
I think I presume he's meaning the diagram where you had the cut rectangle and then, sorry, the printed rectangle and then the red cut rectangle. Is that the diagram you're referring to, Marcus? Oh, he's not saying it's a question. He's saying it would be useful to
have as a diagram.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes,
can put this in a PDF and have it downloadable.
Thank you, Marcus.
All right. We're going to go ahead and go into, a simple Surecuts a lot, print and cut example on what you can do with the program and with the Silver Bullet. So for this example, this is not going to go into depth into tracing, but Surecuts comes with a tracing capability. And what we're going to do is we're going to trace an image here. And so you click the trace button, and you can click the choose and add an image. And I downloaded some jar labels. Let me go to it here. Oh, there it is, food tags. And we'll just bring in some cheesecake. All right, so now this is probably the simplest way. One of the, tracing something that's black is very easy to trace. Sometimes you may have some, multicolored items on here, and you may get some interior. Okay, that's why blackout is checked. So sometimes your default will look just like this, and we hit the update preview, and we do not want these lines in here. So in order to fix that, we need to click choose blackout. we'll do an update on that. And then the other thing that you want to make sure that you have checked here is the add image layer for the print and cut feature. And you can do it that way. And so as you can see, this little red line, it just went around the outer edge. And you may want to fine tune these if you see some other spots coming up. But this worked just fine as is. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So now it's on our mat. And the printed image is tied to that. And we can even do a quick little preview on it. And it looks just fine. Okay, and you can add as many as you want to the paper. On this next example, I added four of these, and we'll see how it cut. So it's just going through the same motions that we did when we did our test print and cut. Same thing, we'll go to cutter, you go to print and cut, and you go to print, so it comes out your printer, and then you'd go ahead and hit the next button, and it will walk you through the whole process. So let's go back to the keynote here, and we'll take a look at what we have. So we've already printed the paper here, and now we're just going to that first registration mark just like we did before. And once we're over that first registration mark, we're going to go ahead and hit the enter key, and it's just like what we did before, where we'll hit 1, and then we'll hit the 2, and then it will go to the 3, and it will go ahead and cut. So there's 1. We're coming up on the 2. And then we'll go to the 3. And what's great about this is when you're doing registration marks in that order 1, 2, and 3, I've even done a test print and cut where I totally misangled the paper. It wasn't straight by any means, and it still cut out perfect. So as you can see, it's going around the shape here, cutting out these labels for me so that I don't have to do it with scissors, right?
Good luck with that one.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a time saver. I mean, once you guys calibrate this, I mean, it's perfect. All right,
so for a lot of people, it seems really difficult up until this point, but once the calibration is done, it's pretty simple after that.
Yeah. I mean, all you have to do is apply the cut lines via the trace, and it just cuts out. You'll see the photos here of how it looked. All right, so now it's all done, and we'll go ahead and take a look. So there's the four pieces right there, and then we'll have a close up here. So there you go. I mean, it came out really good. I was pretty pleased with it. All right, so some of you guys, you may work with Adobe Illustrator, and Dawn can sort of explain the Adobe Illustrator. It puts or you can add registration marks to it, right, Dawn?
That's correct, yes.
All right, so Dawn has pre-filmed this demo, and I'm going to let her pre-recording tell the story. Okay.
In Illustrator, I'm going to draw a rectangle. Making sure the keep proportions isn't locked, I'm going to make the size so that it just fits inside the print area of my relevant printer. And then I will use the alignment window to align it centrally to the artboard. I'm now drawing a second rectangle. Before I size this, I'm going across to Scale, clicking on the cutter window, and then on Settings. And the important part to note here is the mark offset. I have 0.2, that is 2 millimeters. When I return to Illustrator, I'm going to make the smaller rectangle 4 millimeters less in each direction than the large rectangle. This 4 millimeter refers to twice the 2mm used as the mark offset in Scal. So 2mm at one side, 2mm at the other side. And then select both of them and align them centrally to each other. I'm setting the inner rectangle to red so that I can see the difference between them easily. And then I can send that to Scal 4. Once I have those positioned, I turn off the outer black rectangle. I'll now show you how that works with an actual file. So returning to Illustrator, I'm making a second layer and placing it below the one with the rectangles. I'm now putting my design into place. It must all fit within the red rectangle. Then send it to Scal 4. And if I expand the layers, I can turn off the black rectangle. This acts as your registration marks when you've printed. If I use Preview, you can now see that where the black rectangle was, it's replaced with the registration marks, so Scal will cut in the correct place.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and let Dawn talk about some tips here.
Okay, there are ways of making your lining up on the registration marks easier for yourself. An important point of that is to have equal lighting on both sides of the machine. If you've got a light pretty much overhead your machine, you're fine. But for example, in my setup, the light is to one side, so there's more light falling on one edge than there is on the other. I took a strip of LED lighting from IKEA, stuck it inside the lid. I switch that on when I'm doing print and cut, and I've got perfectly good lighting, the same on both sides of edges of the paper. We strongly recommend support tables. If your mat is bowed, it affects the accuracy when you're lining up on the registration marks. If you can't afford support tables or don't want to buy them, use a pile of boxes or books to keep the mat level at the front and back. Again, it will aid you with the accuracy. Third tip is registration mark thickness. This affects a great deal how easy it is to line up. We've got a video on that, Rob, haven't we?
Yes, we do. And it's coming up right here. And like we said before, the laser dot will disappear. So watch this video, it's pretty good.
It's possible to alter the thickness of the registration marks. The benefits of this is for easier lining up. When the line is thin, the laser LED covers much more than just the dot that you're trying to line up on, so you're guessing as to where the centre of the LED light is. When the registration mark is too thick, once the laser LED is completely inside the black dot, it becomes very difficult to see where it is and to centre it. When the registration marks are the correct thickness, the LED light will dim once it is centered exactly over the dot. And just a single step each side shows the laser brightly again, so you can tell you are exactly centered.
So it's almost like the Goldilocks, you know, it's one's too big, one's too small, but then there's one just right.
Yes, and we can't tell you what the correct thickness of registration mark is because it depends on the light where you are. If you've got a very bright room, the LED will appear smaller than if you've got a dim room. So try out a few bits of the mark thickness, print some off as tests, and see at which point your laser LED just disappears when it hits that dot, and your life will be much easier lining up.
All right, and if you guys are trying to thicken up those mark thicknesses, it's under Cutter Settings, and this is the menu that you're looking at right here, and those are the numbers that you'll be adjusting it. And I believe you had values associated with what range you would decide to go through, right, Dawn?
Yeah, I've gone between 0.2 and 0.65. You might need to go slightly higher than that, but certainly not by very much unless your room is virtually blacked out.
Which in that case, the LED will read anyway.
Yes.
All right, so that wraps this this little presentation up.
If I can
Yeah,
just
go
add
ahead.
one point in for the tips again.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that can make life easier for you when you're doing your design, if you add a bleed around your design, if it's all one colour and you can put a bleed around easier, then if you are very slightly out, it will show a lot less than if you have a white line around part of the design.
All righty.
Good tip.
All right, so if you guys are wanting more information on the Silver Bullet machine, you can always go to silverbulletcutters.com. There's distributor links up there on that website. And of course, if you're looking for help, print and cut's a pretty big deal. The forums are usually great for that. And that's on the silverbulletcutters.com as well, where you can ask your question and it seems like instantaneously get an answer, because there's someone around the world that's up monitoring those forums, and they just love to help.